folks. Welcome to a new sub-series that I'm dealing with called Exploring Wabian Marxism. Now, Wabian Marxism in terms of economics, which is what I'm doing for the first one. So this is the economic Wabian Marxist video, alright? So in terms of economics, there ain't much difference. All right, between normal Marxism and Wabian Marxism. But, as you will see, there's a whole lot of stuff that Wabian Marxism adds to just economics. Because if it were Marxist historical materialism, then it would just be this economic section. But I've got 3 total videos covering Wabian Marxism, at least 3. Probably more. But this is also going to be covering only Marxist and Wabian Marxist dialectual, or I guess more historical dialectual materialism. So let's start off with economics. Alright, so economic Marxism is basically the same thing as Wabian economic as Wabian Marxism. So they're basically the same thing. Alright, so let's start off with this first stage. Now this first stage is this is the first stage of Marxism. There are 6 total stages on all 3 of them, but this is more classical Marxism, with the third one slightly changed. Alright, and socialism is slightly changed to be more inclusive of the left. And to fit historical materialism a little bit better. So let's start off with primitivism. Now, in order to understand primitivism, we have to in order to understand all this, we have to understand the difference between free people, semi-enslaved, and fully enslaved. So basically people that are fully free are people that have control over their time and efforts. They have almost complete control over their time and efforts. People who are semi-free have certain portions of their life that are controlled by someone or something else. And people who are enslaved are completely owned by someone or something else. Alright? So, under primitivism, everyone is fully enslaved. Now, this enslavement can be better or worse depending on whether or not you're in early, middle, or late stage primitivism. So let's look at the difference in detail between early, middle, and late stage primitivism. So early stage primitivism is just fire and stone tools. That's all you have. Basically, you have the ability to hunt and collect food, and then you have the ability to cook said food so that you don't get poisoned. That's pretty much it. Alright? Basically, the reason early stage primitivism, and really all primitivism, makes it to where every single person is enslaved is because the basic necessities for survival completely devour all of your life and all of the time within your life. Alright? And this is no more true than in early primitivism. Early primitivism is very hard. There's a very high mortality rate. It's just hard. We then have middle primitivism, which makes things better. This is the invention of tents that you can move about. So they're basically temporary structures that you can pop out basically anywhere. You can pop them out somewhere and then sleep for the night. And then when you wake up in the morning, you roll them all up and then you continue hunting and gathering. So basically, you don't have to make your shelter every night anymore, which allows you to focus more on things like hunting and cooking than you would under early primitivism. Alright? So basically it makes survival just a little bit easier. We then have late stage primitivism, which is the domestication of animals. So we're talking horses, cows, sheep, goats, dogs, cats, basically anything that can be domesticated for use in aiding in survival. They are domesticated here. So basically a herdsman, all that kind of stuff. Think like Middle Eastern herdsman society type of deal. All right, and that basically makes it to where that basically makes things a lot easier to survive as well, because you're relying on other animals to help you out a little bit. But it's still not good. You're still completely enslaved by the necessities of not just your own survival, but now the survival of other animals as well. It just makes things slightly easier than in middle primitivism. But now that we've reached late primitivism, we can go down to the second stage, which is agrarianism. Agrarianism is basically where people learn how to garden, basically cultivate food. People learn how to cultivate food to a significant degree. Under agrarianism, there is a semi-free class and there is an enslaved class of people. So there's a class of people that are enslaved, and then there's a class of people that are semi-free. They have some control over their time and their lives. All right? So in early agrarianism, what in the world is that? What? No. I don't know what that was. Anyway, in early agrarianism, we have basic agriculture. All right? So that's just basically you have domesticated animals, you got tents, and you've got animals, and you're starting to cultivate food now. So now you have even more foods. But basically the majority of people are still going to be enslaved by the basic needs of survival. And those that are semi-free, they do have some time that they control themselves. They are very rare, and they're typically at the tippity top of society. But even they are still enslaved by the necessities of their own survival to a certain degree. We then have middle agrarianism, which basically expands this semi-free class by making permanent architecture so that you can focus more on the basic agriculture. So you have permanent architecture, basically permanent buildings. You can focus on things like domestication and growing food. And so you no longer have to chase after your food anymore. You've basically transitioned from a hunter-gatherer society. And now you have this little village and you're growing everything, this little village or homestead, and you're growing everything and you're raising everything, and that produces your food and helps you out working. You still, even people at the top in this semi-free class, even people at the top are still semi-enslaved. There's not a free class yet. You don't have a free class yet, but that starts to form after late stage agrarianism, which is the development of roads. Now, why do you think roads are important in an agrarian society? Well, the primary reason roads are so important is because roads allow trade between different communities. So think about it this way. Let's say that your particular village had got flooded, and so all of your crops got destroyed. Well, guess what? You can trade some of your stuff with other agrarian societies that didn't experience that flood, with other villages that didn't experience that flood, and they can help you out if they can get to you easily, which is why the development of roads is so important. Really, the development of roads is really just the establishment of multi-village or multi-tribal trade. And so that's really important for an agrarian society. So now we move on from the second stage to the third stage. Now the third stage is serfdom. Now, typically when people think of serfdom, what do they think of? Well, serfdom is really just economic feudalism. All right? It's the economics of a feudal society. So, under serfdom, there is formed a truly free class. Now, under serfdom, there is an enslaved class at the bottom, there's a semi-free class in the middle, and there's a truly free class at the top. This truly free class of people are people that control their labor and control their time. They have the ability to work. They can still work, but they get to choose how they work and all the ins and outs regarding their work. All right? And there's nothing that's really preventing them from doing that. So, the formation of serfdom, of early serfdom, is the formation of nations. So, the formation of nations is basically the idea of developing. It's basically how permanent architecture was for agrarianism. It's basically the establishment of national permanent architecture, national roads, all this stuff. You're forming your nation. You're forming your government. And you're creating trade not just within your region, but with your whole nation. Now regions begin to connect together, form national identities, and now mass trade is possible. Now you can trade for the sake of trading. All right? You can trade for the sake of trading. And trading for the sake of trading allows for large amounts of resources to be traveled in between different regions, which allows certain individuals in control of that large amount of trading to become ultra powerful and become that truly free class. We then have middle serfdom, which is the foundation of military merchants. Basically, it's the idea that conquest and trade should be combined. So basically, you got merchants that have little armies, and they go around and they conquer people, and when they plunder people, they take that plunder and they trade that plunder, and that's what a military merchant really is. So basically, they conquer people outside of their nation, they conquer territory outside of their nation, and that basically allows them to trade within their nation. Trades stuff from outside within their nation. And that basically allows for people who would be military merchants to join the same ranks as the people in control of like the national roads and stuff, and the internal merchants. So they get to join the truly free class as well. We then have late stage serfdom, which opens the classification of merchants to everyone. Everyone is allowed to trade resources, and copious amounts of resources at that. It's now possible for anyone to become a merchant. It's not easy to become a merchant, but it's possible to become a merchant, and so that really expands the truly free class. Then we transition from late stage serfdom to early stage capitalism. So from stage 3 to stage 4. All right? Now, capitalism eliminates the slave class. Now, there still may be slaves, but there is no longer a class of people that are slaves. All right? There's no longer a whole section of society that are devoted to slavery. And that's really early capitalism. Early capitalism is basically late stage serfdom that has eliminated the slavery class. All right? we then move on. So that's pretty simple, and that's a pretty good thing to eliminate slavery, complete slavery at least. There's still going to be semi-slavery, but at least they still have some control. At least most people still have some control. There's the odd slave, of course, but people still have control. All right. Then we have middle stage capitalism. Now, middle stage capitalism is done through globalization. Basically, under serfdom, in order to get products that are native to a different nation, you would have to physically conquer them. But under middle stage capitalism, you're able to directly and peacefully trade with different nations through globalization. So globalization basically just opens up the whole world to trade with, improving people's quality of life and making the merchant class a lot easier. So the elimination of slavery makes it easier to become a merchant. And then the globalization of capitalism opens up new markets and makes old markets bigger so that there's more room for merchants. So it makes the free class of merchants a lot larger. And we're just making it bigger and bigger and bigger. Then we have late stage capitalism, which is the bureaucratic emphasis. So basically, a bureaucratic emphasis is basically the idea that individual merchants are no longer necessary. Individual merchants are inefficient ways of really organizing an economy. So basically, this is like transferring from a company owned by a single individual or group of individuals to having an economy more reliant on things like corporations or co-ops. Basically, more worker and corporate type of thing, so that it's even easier. This time you can climb your way through corporate ladder to get to that merchant class. So the merchant class is removed, but it's replaced by the corporate class. So it's not really removed. It just makes it easier to get to the free class. But then we transition from late stage capitalism to early stage socialism. So now we're going from number 4 to number 5. So we're in the 5th stage of Wabian economic Marxism. All right. Now under socialism, semi-slavery as a class of people, the semi-slave class of people is eliminated completely. There are no more enslaved people. Just like it would be unusual to be a full slave in capitalism, it is also unusual to be a semi-slave in socialism. All right? So, under early stage socialism, that means that the workers own the means of production. So what does that mean? Well, basically, that means that at the very least, under early stage socialism is what a lot of people would call state socialism. Basically, it is the development of a planned economy. Now, why does that remove semi-slavery? Well, basically that removes semi-slavery because now there is no longer economic chaos through the bureaucratic influence, globalization, all that stuff. Under capitalism, there is economic chaos. There's no structure to it, and so certain people are forced into situations where they are exploited. All right? But under socialism, that is removed. Things are streamlined. you have a planned economy. It may not be the most efficient way of organizing an economy, but it is at least majority planned under worker ownership and the means of production. We then have middle socialism. So middle socialism builds off of early socialism just like everything else. Worker control of the means of production. Now this is really important. Basically, this makes this the corporate ladder that was established in late stage capitalism, and it radicalizes it. It basically says that we're going to remove bosses entirely. All right? We're going to make it to where all decisions in the workplace are made through worker vote. So the workers vote on all the decisions that are made in the workplace. All right? So let's say you work at a steel factory and y'all get enough profit to basically upgrade one of your big machines. All right. So if y'all want to upgrade that machine, all the workers that work with that machine get to vote on whether or not to replace the old machine with the new upgraded machine. And this is just an example. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. And basically the idea is that workers should be making the decisions that pertain to their workplaces. All right. We then have late stage socialism. All right. Late stage socialism is basically transitioning from what we typically know of as a Marxist society into a more syndicalist-like society. So basically, early and middle socialism. So think the USSR was a middle socialist nation, all right? It was a middle socialist nation. The workers had a vote on all decisions regarding their workplaces, and it was a planned economy. But Spanish Catalonia and revolutionary Catalonia that occurred right around the same time was late stage socialism because they made it this way, all right? So basically this late stage socialism has to do with how you plan. So in early stage socialism, the plan is made from people at the top and it gradually works its way down to the bottom. But that's very, very inefficient. So late stage capitalism flips it on its head. So instead of being top to bottom, it's bottom to top. So think about it this way. All right, you're a worker in a late stage socialist society, all right? And you would get the opportunity to vote to make a plan. Your vote would make a plan for your workplace. And then all the votes and all the plans that were made from those votes from all the different workplaces will come together to make a sector plan. So they're all the little workplace plans will come together and make this big sector plan, a plan for the whole sector. And then all the sector plans will come together to create the great national plan. All right? And that's basically a much more efficient way of setting up a planned economy. It's actually a way of setting up a planned economy that actually feels and looks similar to a market economy established under capitalism. So you still have that invisible hand type mentality, except you also get the benefits from having a planned economy and knowing that the economy is done through an intelligent method and not through just blind randomness. Now we're moving on from late stage socialism to early stage communism. So now we're on the sixth and final stage of economic Marxism. All right, so this is the sixth and final stage of economic Marxism. This is communism. This is where bureaucracy and all the unnecessary inefficiencies that are found in socialism are removed. All right? So in early stage communism, you have the complete decentralization of the economy. So basically, think of it this way. If there is a government, then that government does not have any say regarding the economy. Even extending to the point where you as a worker in an early stage communist society get to choose how many and what type of taxes the government gets to take from you. All right? So your vote gets to decide even things like taxes, not to mention regulations and all that stuff. So all sorts of regulations and workers' rights and all that stuff, that's completely separate from the government under true communism. True early communism removes government interference from the economy. All right? The economy controls the government, not the other way around. All right? We then have middle communism. Middle communism is the creation of a work-based currency, which basically means that literal hours of work are used as your currency. So, and different hours of work would be different depending on your job. So, it basically means that it would create things that are much less, it would be much less inefficient than normal currency, and it would be much more difficult to oppress people using this work-based currency. Then we have late-stage communism, which basically relies on automation pretty much. Although there are some ideas that could do this with like distribution and stuff, although those are typically seen as a little bit crazy. But late-stage communism is basically, in order to be a late-stage communist society, you have to make it to where all of the absolute basic necessities for survival are almost free. They're at least practically free. So, food is at least practically free. Now, if you get an obscene amount of food, you're probably going to be charged a little bit. But it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be like a few cents or something. But basically, the basic idea is that most of the time you shouldn't have to pay for your food or your water. So basically think like more of a Star Trek-ish era, except it's a little bit more flexible than having, matter manipulators. You don't necessarily have to have matter manipulators in order to have late-stage communism. But Star Trek is a late-stage communist society. Anyway, I hope you liked this content. And if you want to support the channel, then like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. See y'all!